We need to focus more on what we can do and not so much on what we can't do. And that doesn't matter how little you can do. I don't want us to think that every disabled person has to be a super disabled person like me that does 8 billion things. If you are nonverbal and you spend your day watching TV, you are just as valid as I am. And let's focus on what you can do.
Family, today our guest is Maysoon Zayid. Now, she's a comedian, an actress, and disability advocate whose fearless humor challenges stereotypes. My dear friend Lorene Arbus introduced Maysoon to my daughter, some friends, and me at a lovely dinner party in her art-filled Los Angeles home. That evening was incredible, and meeting Maysoon is what helped to make it so. Her TED Talk, I Got 99 Problems, Palsy is just one, has millions of views, and I'm sure you'll be adding yours to it if you've not already seen it. She's a Palestinian American from New Jersey with cerebral palsy. She co-founded the New York Arab American Comedy Festival, and Maysoon uses comedy to mainstream disability in entertainment. She's also mainstreamed herself by making a pregnant pivot from a life's dream to a life's vocation that's giving her dreamlike enthusiasm, success, and most importantly, power to advocate and impact. Her catchphrase says it all. If I can, you can. Family, enjoy my visit with Maysoon. Yes, Maysoon, you've done it all. Stand up, acting, writing, even tap dancing on Broadway. When people ask you what you do, how do you describe yourself?
I say I'm a comedian. I say I'm a comedian. When people ask me, what do you do? Or tell us about yourself, I immediately say I'm a comedian. Because even though I'm a Renaissance woman and I write books and I commentate on the news and I teach in the Ivy League, I still consider myself first, foremost, and most of all, a comedian.
Well, I think that's such a joy for us in the world today because who doesn't want to laugh today, right? And your ability to find the humor inside of all types of circumstances is something that I admire. Can you teach somebody to do that? Or do you think that really has to be a gift?
So I do teach stand-up comedy. I taught stand-up comedy at Arizona State University. I taught it at Princeton University. And I took a stand-up comedy class at Caroline's Comedy Club, a woman-owned comedy club in New York City that's unfortunately now defunct, but that's where I taught. You can teach comedy because comedy in its essence is writing and storytelling. So you could give me a story that's not funny at all, and I can teach you how to make it funny. However, there's another aspect to comedy, which is timing. And that's like how you deliver a joke, how you hit the punchline. And you can't teach timing. You just can't teach it. So I always say, like, if I have 10 students, I can teach 5 of them to be somewhat funny. One of them is going to be really funny. One of them will never be funny in their life, no matter how hard they try.
Okay,
Like,
so I'm
there
that
is
one.
always one. You don't know because you haven't trained with me. You have to train with
Okay,
me
so
first.
let's do this. Let's do this, Maysoon. So I'm going to give you a scenario. You tell me how to get it funny, okay? How to find the funny. So, Maysoon, I stumped my toe. It's really killing me. I've got to put on shoes and I have a social obligation, so I can't go open toe. Tell me how to make that funny.
Details are what it's all about. First of all, what'd you stub your toe on?
Okay, I stubbed my toe
See, details are what
on
it's
a
about,
brick
right?
wall.
There's a difference between I stubbed my toe on a chair, which is kind of boring. I stubbed my toe on a cat tree, which is a little bit funnier. I stubbed my toe on the curb getting into the taxi, and then I face planted into the taxi with my butt up against the partition is even funnier. So it's all in the details. Like Where did you stub your toe? We just scream right after you stub your toe, right? Are you a clean comic? And did you scream fudsicle? Are you a dirty comic? And did you scream something that's like a really funny, eccentric way of cursing someone's mother? It's all in the details how you make it funny. Also, pain is very interesting. Some things that are funny to everybody are the things that are relatable to everybody. Having parents, falling in love and having like heartbreak and pain, falling down the stairs, having cramps, stubbing your toe. So when you take a story like the toe stub, everyone immediately is in there with you. They're like, I stubbed my toe. I remember what that felt like. What happened? How'd she do it? What'd she do? What
Yeah, yeah.
happened? Wearing the shoe to the event nobody cares about. I'll tell you why. Because like we're so involved with the toe that when you get to the shoe, we want it to be all about the toe. Like, did you fall on the toe and then have to cut a hole in a closed toe shoe so that the toe could swell and breathe? Like it's more about the toe and you than the shoe and the event.
Oh my goodness. You know what? You have just done a master class there. And I think it's not just about teaching comedy and making circumstances uncomfortable funny. I think it's also about being able to find the funny in our lives no matter what's going on. And
Yeah.
that's one of the things I love so much about you. Now, I've not cheated our audience, okay, who we call our family. I've not cheated them at all. I let them know that I met you. What I didn't tell them is that I just found out the day before we're podcasting that you were going to be on the podcast. And so our dear friend, Lorene Arbus, who introduced us, did such a kind thing in bringing you into my life because I thought about so much of what you and I shared there. I want you to take us back a little bit right now and just tell us about the moment you realized, oh, wait, I'm actually really funny. What
Yeah.
did you have an aha on your funny?
Such an aha. So, first of all, huge shout out to Lorene Arbus. Lorene Arbus, I consider one of my main mentors. It's like my grandmother's, my mom, and Lorene Arbus. Like that's it. You know, my main women mentors. She is an extraordinary teacher and a connector, and I just adore her. Okay, you ready for it?
Yeah.
I'm born I'm born. Doctor who delivers me is drunk. I'm born on Labor Day. I lose a bunch of oxygen. I have cerebral palsy. My parents can't afford physical therapy, so they send me a tap class. They can't afford occupational therapy. They send me to piano lessons. It's like, you know, PT is like $25 back in the day. Dance class was like $5 a week, and you had to go 3 times. You know what I'm saying? So I grew up in New Jersey across the river from Broadway. And my classes are always going on field trips to Broadway. I see Evita with Patti LuPone and Phantom
Oh,
of the Opera. Yeah. And Grand Hotel with Sid Charisse. Listen, I know black don't crack, but cinnamon, it stays smooth. It's very smooth.
yeah.
I'm older than the Americans with Disabilities Act. So I grew up wanting to tap dance on Broadway. And I grew up watching soap operas. There were only 3 channels. We would run home. I would limp home quickly at 3 o'clock and I would watch General Hospital. Completely inappropriate. My parents should not have let me watch it, but I did. And I dreamt of being on General Hospital. So I went to college and studied theater. And I was a drama queen. I was a drama queen. My professors wept openly when I did Glass Menagerie. They were like, oh my God, she's disabled. Look at her. That's amazing. And then I never got cast in anything because Hollywood shunned disability. And so I was taking a theater class with a master, a man named Marshall Mason, who founded Circle Rep Theater with a woman named Tanya Berezin. I graduated college, and my teacher there told me, go take Tanya's class. I took Tanya's class, and she looked at me and she said, girl, ain't no one ever gonna cast you. You know where you belong? And I was like, no, where? And she was like, comedy. And I was like, So I started looking at comedy, and who do I see? Richard Pryor. Richard Pryor is the OG shaking comic of color who was like shamelessly a wheelchair user later in life, who joked about his disability, who joked about his addiction, who joked about being bisexual when that was like unheard of. And I looked at stand-up comedy and I was like, that could be interesting. And then I went and took the class at Caroline's, and first night I killed it. And the reason that I killed it was I had spent a lot of time in my life being the quiet disabled girl, observing everything around me. I wasn't like, ba, 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 ba. I became that at like 27. But when I was younger, I was the quiet disabled girl who was hanging out with like the cast of Rent on Broadway and the cast of Civil War, and like trying to be like theater adjacent and like trying to get my big break. And I didn't, I spent so much time listening to people and observing details that once it came time to like let loose, I had jokes for years. I had jokes about my parents. I had jokes about my ex-husband. I had jokes about my friends. I had jokes about, I literally dated a river dancer on Broadway. I had jokes about, and I was a hit the first night. And the teacher, Michael Irwin, may he rest in peace, he stopped me and he's like, what is going on? And I was like, oh, yeah, like I have cerebral palsy. It's not a big deal. And I don't really feel like talking about my disability. And he said, and you've met me in real life, for those of you who can't see me right now, my cerebral palsy presents as I shake all the time. And I quite honestly look hammered, wasted, drunk almost all the time. And so yeah, so I'm swaying on stage, I'm standing, and I can't stand. So my cerebral palsy, I'm an ambulatory wheelchair user. I use a wheelchair when I have to go far, like airports and Disney and stuff like that. And then I walk in real life, and sometimes I even stumble around in heels that I shouldn't be. But I can't stand. I have to be in motion or I have to be sitting. Period. The end. And so I was standing and I'm swaying back and forth on stage. And the students are laughing because I am funny. But Erwin's like, hey. And so he stopped me and he said, listen, I understand that you don't want to talk about your cerebral palsy, but the audience sees three things right now. Either somebody who's nervous, somebody who's drunk, or someone who's having a medical emergency and they're going to call 911. So you got to tell them what is happening with you. And in that moment, my entire persona for the rest of my life was born, because I came back to the next class and I said, hi, my name is Maysoon Zayid. I'm a Palestinian Muslim virgin with cerebral palsy from New Jersey. And if you don't feel better about yourself, maybe you fucking should. And the idea was, okay, I have to tell you I have cerebral palsy. Well, guess what? It's not the main part of my personality. And now, like years later, I'm a freestyle comic, so I don't like to repeat anything. But my intro to this day has basically stayed the same. But I laugh because I now say I'm Palestinian, I'm Muslim, I'm a woman of color, I'm disabled, I'm divorced, and I live in New Jersey. So the virgin got replaced with the divorce, which is just kind of great because a lot of people don't think of people with cerebral palsy as being someone who gets married. And when I said I was a virgin, it was also, they don't think of us as sexual beings. And it was this whole idea that like, you see disability, but look at what else I'm throwing in front of you. And I'm from Jersey.
Yes, yes, yes. And that is so how I met you at Lorene's lovely dinner party. And you just stayed in my mind and my heart. We got to go back on a couple of things that you just talked about. And thank you so much for that. First, I want you to share with us and with me in particular. Do you feel completely fulfilled that you did a pivot from maybe the dramatic acting, etc., to the comedy, etc.? And then the second thing I want you to lay in a little bit on is this word disability. In this season, in this world change, we're all looking at where we rename, rechange, we're sensitive to who we call and what we call each other. Is disability the right word so people can understand from someone who's calling that out themselves? And you come from comedy.
Yeah.
There's this thing in comedy that likely we won't say right here, where I can call me this, but you can't call me this. So let's
Right.
help people
Yeah,
know.
I'll unpack a whole bunch of stuff for you. So I'm going to start out with the fact that in 2010, I stopped using slurs in my comedy. And I don't believe in that comedic license to injure people and to use slurs that haven't been used on you. So I do on stage talk about being spazzy because I'm spazzy. But yes, you don't get to call me spazzy, and that's like a whole thing. But right now, we're in a place where, like, 5 years ago, I was teaching people not to use ableist language. Like, it's not a crippling storm because cripple is not negative. Don't use negative terms, disability terms, to describe things that are negative. Now, honestly, we are fighting for healthcare. We are fighting for education. We are fighting for rights. We are fighting for safety. And, like, I don't know where the word part of that is now occurring. I personally chose to stop using slurs because I was on stage in 2010 and I did a pedophilia joke that was like a huge hit, very funny. And a woman came up to me after the show, and she said, were you molested as a child? And I said, no. And she said, you don't have a right to tell that story. She's like, I came out to have fun. You invoked the darkest moment of my life. And if it was part of your history, that's different. But why did I have to sit through that? Why is it a joke to you? And then I realized, I was like, nah, like, I don't want to be the comedian that hurts you and invokes a slur that was slung at you just because I'm allowed to do it. It doesn't remove the violence. However, if I make you uncomfortable because I'm talking about a subject that is my personal experience, and you're not happy because my personal experience makes you uncomfortable, be uncomfortable. I don't mind making people uncomfortable. I don't mind when someone gets up and leaves. I come from the lineage of George Carlin and, Whoopi Goldberg and people who, Robin Williams, who just, said what was in their heart, said it in a comedic way, because so much darkness is hard to understand unless it's coated in honey, in sugar. A spoonful of sugar makes that medicine go down.
And this bringing the light to darkness through comedians is basically, I think, part of the pedigree of being a comedian, is it not? I'm asking, I'm not stating. And I say that because, I mean, you think about Charlie Chaplin, and the source of his comedy had some very dark places that it came from. And so I'm just wondering if they're almost, if not a
It's
requisite,
not
at
inherent.
least some type of platform of helping people to laugh through what you've experienced
It's
rather
not
than laughing at them for what they've
it's
experienced.
not inherent. It really depends on the comedian, right? Because we have, like, Andrew Dice Clay, we have Dane Cook. There's a whole genre of male comics who just get out there and, flip it out on stage. And they're causing trauma almost instead of getting over it. There is a boys club in comedy that's not about healing anyone. That's just kind of about, I'm the guy, I'm the cool guy, I'm the funny guy, and they're still making fun of everyone. They're still making fun of everyone. Then there's this other group of comedians who come from such deep pain and found a way to use laughter to heal. People like George Carlin and Robin Williams and Richard Pryor. When you look at their history, I'm sorry, I'm only speaking about men. I think Rosie O'Donnell and the loss of her father is another good example of this. When you
How
look,
about Joan Rivers? Joan Rivers was loved by so many. How about Joan Rivers?
I think Joan Rivers is a whole nother genre, which was Joan Rivers was the woman who broke through all the men and was just as funny and just as irreverent and just as mean.
She stood her ground to be elegant and well dressed. She didn't fluff her hair out oh, I'm missing her name now. Oh, how
Carol
shame on
Channing.
me. Phyllis Diller.
Oh,
She
Phyllis
didn't do
Diller.
Diller. She didn't, do Sophie Tucker with the big dresses. Mom's Mabley. Those women.
She also really helped young comedians a lot. A lot.
Yeah. So there have been some women. I think your point that it's still an old boys club, or there is an old boys club, is speaking to the weight of, we find that comedian and we find those comedians. There's just so
Right.
many.
I mean, we had a problem with the Late Show with David Letterman, where they counted it out and it was like 12 comedians, one a month, all men. And the women exist. So I produce something called the New York Arab American Comedy Festival. It's an annual festival at Joe's Pub at the Public Theater. And I make sure that we have a minimum of 50% women on stage. And sometimes it's 80% women. And people are like, oh my gosh, there's only like one man on the lineup. And I'm like, yeah, because I've been on a million lineups where I'm the only woman, but I'm also usually the only disabled person. And comedy clubs, theaters, spaces at colleges are not accessible. Sometimes the audience is accessible, but the stage itself isn't accessible. So it's kind of nightmarish trying to move around these spaces. And again, like, I'm blessed and lucky to be an ambulatory wheelchair user, so I can ditch a wheelchair and get in a space. Like, I've had to sit on stairs and like scoot down the stairs and then scoot like back up the
Yeah.
stairs to get into spaces. Now I'm
That's what my little grandson is doing now. And you make me think of him with the joy that you have in your life. Yet the gravity and the seriousness of what you're speaking cannot be minimized to, having to move the same way you did when you were a year old as my grandson in a public adult
in a
space.
public adult place where I'm the person of honor. Like,
Yeah.
imagine I'm getting an award and it's all high top tables that I can't stand at. Things like that. So now with great power comes great responsibility. Now things like that are not allowed to happen. In that,
And to Lorene Arbus's mom, let's give
yes.
credit as well to her family, because they did so much to impact the Americans with Disabilities Act, and through the Jerry Lewis telethons that were put on, ABC all those years ago, and just the work that they did in the earlier days, from having had the experience of being a family who could afford to go anywhere they wanted, but couldn't choose to go anywhere they wanted because they had a daughter who was in a wheelchair. And then that
There
was
were
that was
two
not
giant
allowed because it made other patrons uncomfortable.
Yes, there were two giant things that the Goldensons, who are Lorene Arbus's parents, did. Lorene had a sister named Cookie who had cerebral palsy, the same disability I have. Lorene's mother championed disabled parking and disabled bathroom stalls, which
Yeah.
are a game changer for
Yeah.
disabled
Yeah.
people everywhere. Because if you can't look, I have a little friend, Beyonce.
Oh, your friend is welcome.
Yeah, Beyonce. She sometimes charges though because of the whole name. Um,
Yeah.
but they champion those things, and what now the level
One
that
second. Those who are listening and not watching, Beyonce is a gorgeous feline who just walked across the back of Maysoon's
sauntered.
chair.
She sauntered. She literally sauntered and then exited elegantly as a Beyonce cat would do.
But let's go
Um,
back to the golden work of those Goldens.
so the Goldensons, who are Lorene Arbus's parents, champion disabled parking and disabled bathroom access, and also, as you mentioned, something so much more important, which was dignity. Dignity for people with disabilities, so that we would be welcome in spaces, and the people who shunned us would be shunned instead of us being shunned. And Lorene continued her parents' work, empowering an entire generation of disabled voices to kind of transform the way disability is presented on television. And when I say I'm blessed now to have great power, I now have the power to produce a show and say, this show will not be produced in any space that's not accessible backstage and in front of stage. My production company, Can Productions, employs 20% disabled people to reflect the 20% that we have in the population. We create mentorships in my production company because we understand that so many colleges and film schools are not accessible. So they can't get the experience that they need in order to be a DP on a film or in order to be an artistic director on a film, because the education element is not accessible. So we try to create these spaces. And the main thing that I do, and this is where the pivot comes in. When you ask me about the pivot, comedy is so cool because comedy opens the doorway for the misfits, right? So Drew Carey, he started out as a comedian. Jerry Seinfeld is a comedian. Richard Pryor, again, a comedian. All those people, Jim Carrey, a comedian, they went into film. They went into television. They went into hosting. Joan Rivers doing her fashion police kind of thing. So I ended up having all my dreams realized through stand-up comedy, mashallah. Because in 2010, my stand-up comedy festival, New York Arab American Comedy Festival, produced a show called Arabs Gone Wild on Broadway. So in 2010, I tap danced on Broadway. And then Lorene Arbus led me to the stage of TED, where my TED Talk went viral. And I ended up touring with Glennon and Doyle, Abby Wambach, and Brene Brown, and ended up tap dancing on Broadway again. And then the people at General Hospital heard me talking about General Hospital in the TED Talk, and General Hospital gave me a role as a lawyer on General Hospital. And I only defend people who end up dead a week after I have them acquitted. I'm not sure why. Maybe I'm evil. Maybe I'm not. It's fun. It's General Hospital. So I got to go to all those things, but I never reached the level of all of the men that I trained. And we could never tell which part of me made it impossible. Was it that I was a woman who was, not svelte and a person of color? Was it that I was Muslim? Was it that I was disabled? We never knew like what it was. We just knew that like I had the cred, I had the audiences, I taught the people who were going on stage, I got standing ovations whenever I did comedy, but like I never got a late night spot. I never got that seat on The View. So I decided to create my own view, which is called the Disco. And Disco stands for Disability Community. And I created a live event that I tour globally, not just nationwide, but globally. And everywhere I go, I find three other fabulous disabled women. And this is inspired by the way that Lorene has spent 20 years connecting me at dinner parties with all these amazing women. And also kind of watching Sex in the City and being like, oh, wouldn't it be cool to listen to a bunch of disabled women having a conversation
Ah.
just like this? Like, just like this, that we don't talk about wheelchairs all the time. Sometimes we talk about men. Sometimes we talk about cats. Sometimes we talk about a dinner party gone
But
wrong
we're
where
not
the
going to talk about
Palestinian
what we
starts crying.
Hey, Maysoon, we're not going to talk about what we talked about at the dinner party, though.
We are
That's
not.
personal. That's private.
Right. But what I'm saying is I wanted to take that vibe.
Yes.
The
Yeah.
vibe of taking, like, for example, when we just did Joe's Pub Pride, we had Ryan J had dad with us. When we did Joe's Pub in February, I had Lachi. She's a Grammy Governor's Board artist. And I had Rachel Handler. And she's a woman who lost her leg in a car accident and kind of comes from the perspective of like, what does it mean to become disabled? And I had someone who's a Paralympian in the version of disco that I did in Ramallah. And I have my typist who's blind. And everywhere I go, I find these fabulous women, most of whom have never met each other, but really should know each other, live in the same place, and are living in this bubble, right? Because not all the disabled people know each other, and our empowerment is not unified. It's usually like, okay, we got one disabled person, that's enough. We don't want a whole table of wheelchairs. How are we even going to fit that? And so disco is all about amplifying other disabled voices other than mine. And that's what I mean by like when you have power. I have the power to say to any university that hires me, I won't do a show without an American Sign Language interpreter. The response usually is, well, we only put an interpreter if someone signs up. And I say, no, we want deaf people to be able to come at any time. I want them to decide 5 minutes before, just like any of the rest of us, walk in and have it interpreted. So
Recently, when I was inducted into Delta Sigma Theta sorority, um, I attended so many events in DC, and it was beautiful, including, and I should say especially, the university events when they did the step show in a big auditorium. And everywhere I went, you saw people signing. The beautiful thing for me is that I saw so many people going up and taking those seats and able to enjoy, you know, and for me, I just wondered, why haven't we always? I'm so glad to hear that you are, even in the face of the sadness of hearing everybody's not. And
it's
I
so
want to
beautiful, though, right? Didn't it
it
add
is.
to
It
the
is.
step
It is.
show?
Mason, I want to move you though, because in your memoir, "Find Another Dream," which everybody's going to read if they haven't already in our family, you share some vivid memories of growing up, and you talk about summers in Palestine with your hilarious aunts and your dad teaching you to walk by putting your heels on his feet. And I remember you sharing that at the dinner party. When you look back, what parts of your childhood shaped the performer you are today beyond the
Ah,
pivot you needed to take away from dramatic acting?
one of the, I think the thing that shaped me, and like I'm leaning back for anyone who can't see me right now, I'm just giving it to God. Okay, are you ready? The,
Yes, yes, yes. Go, girl.
the
Go.
thing that
Go.
shaped me.
Go.
Okay, I only sleep 3 hours a night. It's unhealthy. I've only slept 3 hours a night since I'm 5 years old. I love, 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 love television. And I watch hours and hours and hours and hours of television. And I think that I consumed so many stories that I became a storyteller. And when I would go to Palestine in the summer, there was no TV. There were no cell phones. There was no internet. And so what I would do is I would sit in these sewing circles with my aunties, and my aunties would tell these stories, and I would want to be part of the fun. So I would start telling stories too with them. And when I grew up and started telling stories about my family, I knew how to do it with love, respect, reverence, but hilarious comedy, like about how there were no men in the village to kill a chicken. So my aunt just picked one up and spun its head. And, you could tell that story in a way where she looks, unintelligent and low class, or you could spin it in a way which was real, like that she was brave and that she used the resources, and the result was really hilarious. But in the end, what was done needed to be done in this hilarious way. And they were women. It was my grandmother's voices, it was my aunt's voices. They were the storytellers who taught me how to be a storyteller. So I was always very shamelessly woman. I was not a person who tried to go on stage and be like, I'm just like the boys and now I'm going to do boys things. I was at a film festival in Switzerland, Locarno Film Festival. And I said to them, it's shocking to me that we have so few women directors to this day, because women are inherently the storytellers. We are the generational storytellers. We are the ones who keep family history alive, who tell the stories of our grandmothers and our aunts and our cats and our childhood. And
And we decide what stuff to keep that gives you some lineage back to where those stories
exactly.
originate.
We are the keepers. And yet when you go to this mainstream Hollywood level, we're absent. And that's why, we circle back to someone like Lorraine Arbus, who was a female executive in the 80s and 90s in television when it was like unheard of. I was a comic when there were no women anywhere. Like there were women, yes, of course, but it wasn't like today. I could go 7 8 shows and be the only woman. So when you talk about the things that form me, this watching TV constantly juxtaposed with the need to always have people. I can't just be across a screen. I actually do need to physically touch people.
You and I are so much alike in that way. We are alike in so many ways, as we discovered over the dinner party. And I'm just loving who you are and so grateful you're even in this touch point way in my life. You talk in your TED Talks. Actually, you joke about you say, what is it? I got 99 problems
Tell
and
me
policies,
how there's
just
just
one.
one.
Yeah. So it appears that humor has been somewhat of a superpower for you, but not just on stage, in the way you navigate life as well. And there's some members of our family listening to you right now, and they appreciate the humor. They need the humor, whether it's around disability or whether it's around when you talk about, yes, wherever you're talking. I just really want to have you share how you're navigating life, how it helps you navigate life and not just an audience.
I want one more terrible thing that shaped me as a child. It's Tinkerbell slash disabilities win awards. Tinkerbell in the Disney movies, she needs applause to stay alive. Do you know about Tinkerbell?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
She'll die if we don't clap for her.
Yes, yes, yes. I've known a lot of
That was
Tinkerbells.
not something I should have been taught as a child, because I'm still Tinkerbell. Like, I need friggin' applause. I need it. I love performing. That's why I'm a comedian first. Because
Yeah, yeah,
Tinkerbell
yeah, but
belongs to
Maysoon,
applause.
Maysoon, when we were talking about your TED Talk, it wasn't just funny though. It was
No.
deeply human and it struck a chord around the whole world. What I'm asking you is, as you look back, what do you think it tapped into that
Yeah.
people needed to hear?
So the TED Talk sets up this decade, right? Because the TED Talks a decade ago, there was a couple of things that people needed to hear. And the TED Talk, I knew exactly what I was doing. So I had been a stand up comedian for 10 years when I hit the TED stage, and I knew exactly what I was doing. Exactly. I knew that this was my Oscar speech and that this was my chance. And nobody but Lorene and Pat Mitchell believed in me because I
Mm,
couldn't jump through the hoops. In addition to
mhm.
having cerebral palsy, I'm neurodivergent. And they wanted me to write this script, and it wasn't in my personality to do so. So, like,
Define neurodivergent for our audience.
so I'm not autistic. Neurodivergent means I have some like quirks that I literally can't control. And one of them is I don't write things. I think of things and then I dictate them to other people who write them. But my stand up comedy, I never write, ever, ever. It comes from my heart and that's it. Like, I don't know how to the disconnect. There's a huge disconnect. But another example of being neurodivergent is like if my plans change, I have to like sit down and like remap everything in my head and then go forward. However, I spend a lot of times in war zones. And in war zones, I'm using some other part of my brain, and all of the quirks that I have in the United States, I don't have in Palestine. So, like, when there's a drone above my head, I'm not like, oh my God, ambient noise. But if I'm in the States and your phone keeps binging, I'll have a seizure. Like, I'll actually have a seizure. So I'm not quite sure why the neurodivergence turns off in emergency situations, but it does. But when I did that TED talk, again, it's Spider Man. With great power comes great responsibility. I wanted to shame the people watching me because I knew they had great power and tell them they needed to stop having non disabled actors play visibly disabled on screen because we exist and we're not being given opportunities. And I quite honestly find imitations of visible disability to be clownish and insulting and uncomfortable and don't actually look like our disabilities. But also, it was very important for me to ground a Western audience in the fact that my Palestinian Muslim father was a human being, that he was not disposable, that he was a girl dad, like those girl dads that we see in all these inspirational, sports commercials. And I had grown up watching Palestinian men be disposable, be destined to be killed, be framed as terrorists, be framed as abusers, be framed as having four wives. And here was this man with four daughters who just put his heart and soul in letting every single one think she was the favorite, even though I was. They'll all say they were. And also taking a disabled daughter and teaching her confidence and teaching her joy and teaching her strength and shunning family members who said, get rid of her. She's an embarrassment. Her sisters won't get married if they see there's disability in the family. And being very shameless and really a trailblazer in our town in Cliffside Park that didn't want to allow me to go to mainstream school because I had a physical disability that they considered an intellectual disability because they weren't evolved enough to have a conversation with me. And my immigrant father fought for me to go to school mainstream. And if I didn't, I wouldn't be here. And and also my mom went to college after I was born. She got her bachelor's and her master's. She became chief of lab at a New Jersey hospital. And this was, again, a Palestinian Muslim man who raised his daughters, who was a Mr. Mom when it wasn't a thing, and who, not just allowed us, but encouraged us to do whatever we dreamt of. So for me, it was pursuing theater. For my sister, she's the ambassador representing Palestine at the United Nations. You know what I mean? And I wanted that TED talk to show people that this Palestinian Muslim man who you probably picture Osama bin Laden, God forbid, in your head, is my dad. And I want people to learn from him.
I'm so glad you shared that with our audience, especially for those who've not yet seen your TED Talk and now will. And again, you reveal your strength and your advocacy. For instance, in your novel Shiny Misfits, you created Bayan, a disabled kid who's not a stereotype. She's funny, she's bold, even a little bit mischievous, Maysoon. And I think maybe that was another way that you've been able to show disability in such a real and relatable way for children. We've been talking about adults and who you've impacted, but
Yeah.
being able to, impact children as well. You've often said you don't want pity, you want possibility. What do you think, whether it's through Shiny Misfits and Bayan, or through the work you do on the stage, or through, your theater groups? What do you wish people to understand about living with a disability, not just in entertainment, but in everyday life? Remember, a lot of our family listening right now do not have the advantage nor the vantage point you have
Yeah.
from the stage and from an international perspective. What do you think they can learn? What can you
Well,
offer?
disability doesn't discriminate. Anyone can become disabled at any time, regardless of race, religion, economic status, age. Nothing protects you. There's absolutely nothing out there that will save you. And I believe that it's not better to be dead than disabled. And I believe that disabled people, I'm talking to us too, and I believe disabled people, non disabled people, we need to focus more on what we can do and not so much on what we can't do. And that doesn't matter how little you can do. I don't want us to think that every disabled person has to be a super disabled person like me that does 8 billion things. If you are nonverbal, and you spend your day watching TV, you are just as valid as I am. And let's focus on what you can do and how to allow people to communicate. And let's, as a community, realize making things accessible just makes it easier for everyone. Like we started doing captions for deaf people. Now, people who don't want to work at their boring desk jobs can watch full series reading captions. Thank the deaf people, right? Anything that's wheelchair accessible becomes easier for a cameraman. It becomes easier for a stroller. It becomes easier for the elderly. So, like, making the world more accessible, it needs to stop being an afterthought. And, I joke on stage about the fact that I've spent 25 years being a disability advocate, a comedian, and I've spent my entire life being Palestinian. And now I'm living through a mass disabling event. And the future of most Palestinians is disabled. So I want a world where we create accessibility from the ground up, not as an afterthought. There's a library that was just built in Queens, and like two entire floors were not accessible, and no one caught it. I want us to think ahead. And when I talk about something like Shiny Misfits, it's much bigger than just disability. Shiny Misfits is about the fact that we have got to stop bullying, that words matter, that it's not okay for your 5 year old to go to kindergarten and start pointing at the kid in the wheelchair or the kid with the diabetes pump patch because you didn't take the time to show him Miss Rachel or Sesame Street and teach them what disability is. We need to create kinder children. I was not bullied as a child. I was not bullied as a child. I came from a 1 square mile village in Jersey where the moms were like, don't you dare. Don't you dare make fun of her. I think some of them were like, or you'll end up like her. You're not supposed to say that anymore. But, I want people to create compassionate children. I want people to support healthcare and home based services for people with disabilities. I want them to understand that this myth that people are faking disabilities to steal assistance is really just a myth, because getting disabled assistance in the United States of America is extraordinarily difficult to do, and sometimes even takes having a lawyer help you. So, like, I'm not sitting here pretending to limp for 35 years because disabilities win awards. We're not faking it. We are valid members of society. We deserve love. We deserve education. We deserve opportunity. And when you have a disabled talent applying for a job or auditioning for a role, they're usually 10 times more talented than their non disabled peer, because they had to fight that much harder. And also, disability is so white. So let's make sure that when we're having conversations about disability, we don't forget that, again, disability doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care what race you are, and we all have disabilities.
And it's not always something you're born with. You can also gain disability as well. Gain disability as well. You end your TED Talk, Maysoon, with a line that says, "If I can, you can." And you kind of started our conversation saying that as well. You shared with us something so important that all of our family listening maybe need, whether they are chasing a dream or just looking to get through the day or figure out what's going on for them in their lives. And I just want you to leave them that final thought before we go to 4 for 4 around the can you speak all of us have.
Yeah. So when my dad was teaching me how to walk, he used to say, "You can do it. Yes, you can. Can, as in the dance where you kick your legs up," because I was tap
Yes.
dancing and we were doing line kicks. And it was like, "Yes, you can." And that's how he taught me how to do it. But what can means is you can do it. Yes, you can. That doesn't mean that you can do what I can. You can't come and speak Arabic on stage and, in Qatar and do a comedy routine. And I can't do 7 different things that you've been able to do. You can do what you can do. But don't you dare say you can't without trying. But also, don't try to do cardiac surgery and be like, "Yes, I can." I'm not saying be irrational. I'm saying, like, they told me I couldn't wash my hair. They're like, "You don't have the coordination to wash your hair." Then we all went bankrupt because COVID canceled all the live events. Guess who learned how to wash her hair? This girl right here. Then they told me you can't shave your legs. Guess who took a 7-inch piece of skin off of her legs and could not shave her legs and can. You must also be okay with can't. But don't tell me you can't if you don't try.
I love it. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. There was a song actually that said, "Yes, we can. Yes, we can." And the French do it so beautifully with the
So
dance.
musical, the
And
skirt.
I know, Maysoon, we can open people's lives not only to the responsibility and the ability of the disabled, to all of our abilities through this. I'm just so excited to get this out to the family to listen to. So, family, I hope you're enjoying it so much. Shall we go 4 for 4?
4 for 4. Shiny Misfits. First of all, huge shout out to Scholastic, who stood by me and made this thing happen. The book, my animator, also a woman in a male dominated genre. We're 2 women who did this comic book. It's going to be a series. Go out, get Shiny Misfits. Go, your kids, your grandkids at the book fair, scoop up every copy of Shiny Misfits. Make Scholastic proud that they took this risk, because it's actually not a risk. It's a hilarious book that every single kid, regardless of ability, can have fun listening to. I mean, reading. But then you got to get the audiobook on Audible for Shiny Misfits, because my dear friend Dave Matthews, the rock star, is the voice of the cat that sauntered by. And he's the voice of the cat on Shiny Misfits. I just love that I'm the voice of Bayan, and her cat is a 60-year-old white man. And it's just a yes, we can. That's part of diversity.
Awesome.
Is that,
Uh,
and that's the other part, but also disco. People can watch disco on my YouTube channel, on my Instagram channel. We just filmed 2 new episodes. We're putting up 2 full episodes, one in Arabic, one in English. We have English subtitles on the Arabic one. Please follow disco. You can bring disco to your corporation, and I will find 3 women in your company who are disabled to join me for the panel. Everywhere we take disco, we have new women joining us on the panel. And if you're really nice, I might throw a man on there. We'll see. And then finally, my 444 is Lorene Arbus is one of the muses of Shiny Misfits. So the principal in the school of Shiny Misfits is Principal Arbus.
Okay, well, now we're going to do my 4 for 4. I'm going to ask you 4 questions, and you'll give me 4 answers to each. There are no right or wrong answers, okay? And the first question is, you get to host a dinner party. What 4 people will be at your dinner? And they can be from any time in history to present, and why?
Oh my God, my cat is sick.
Yeah.
My cat's sick. I'm so sorry. Oh my gosh.
Oh.
You hear her? Oh
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's love.
I'm having a dinner party and my cat is throwing up in the background, which makes it even more fun. 4 people from history, Virgin Mary.
Or present.
But everyone.
People, but humans, not humanoids.
What's a
And do you need to go get Beyonce?
No, I'm okay. We're gonna be fine. I am going to throw out the food that I bought though, because anyway. So my 4 people that I would invite to the dinner party would be Virgin Mary, Lorene Arbus, Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
You gotta make my mom and dad one. I can't pick between the 2 of them. My mom is tiny. She's 5'1". We'll put her butt.
Okay, they both get to come.
So yeah, Muhammad Ali, Virgin Mary, Lorene Arbus, and my mom and dad.
Okay, so why Muhammad Ali? Why Virgin Mary?
Well, the Virgin Mary, because I mean, she is the end all be all of women. Like, that's it.
And Muhammad Ali?
The Virgin Mary is the most often mentioned woman in the Quran. She's the mother of Christianity. She's, the OG Palestinian, like, veil wearing woman. She's Virgin Mary. She's that. And then Muhammad Ali, Cassius Clay was against the war. And when he converted and he became Muhammad Ali, he became a huge figure for young Muslims in America. There was really nobody. It was like Muhammad Ali. And then Kareem Abdul-Jabbar came into the picture. But at the time, it was really just Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali then grows up. He gets Parkinson's and he starts shaking. And he doesn't hide. He doesn't go into obscurity. No, he proudly shakes the Olympic torch and lights that flame. No shame, showing that it's okay to become disabled, that you can be the greatest and still be the greatest, even if you're not the powerhouse that you once were.
Gorgeous. And what about your parents and Lorene? Why?
Lorene is the most interesting woman who you will never, ever hear every single story. Right? So if I throw her into this mix, she probably met Jesus somehow and we don't know. Like, Lorene has those stories where you're like, what? You helped the Sistine Chapel be restored? You know what I mean? And then my parents, I can't pick between them. My dad is so funny. My dad's in heaven also. I miss him and I want him at every single dinner party and breakfast and anything I could ever have him at again. But he's so funny. And my mom is elegance. She's like that grounding force at the dinner where if we all get too silly, she'll be like, excuse me, we have dessert now.
Okay, we're this is a dinner party we can't miss. 4 pieces of music you're listening to and why. It can be by artist or genre or what.
Saint Levant. He's a Palestinian Algerian hip hop rapper, R&B, and I'm listening to his song Samra. It's unbelievable. Eliana, Elyanna. She has a song called Mama A. She's on tour with Coldplay, also Palestinian. Arrested Development, Everyday People, like almost on repeat. Can't stop listening to it. Don't know why. Constantly. And then Dave Matthews. I just kind of have Dave Matthews like percolating in the background. It's not even specific songs. It's like
Kind of a balance out, really.
yeah, right. Because I am sadly like torn between two cultures, like one foot in Palestine, one foot in Jersey. I like to say one foot in Jerusalem, one foot in Jersey because I like JER. And it's like as much as I only identify as a displaced Palestinian woman living on the Lenni Lenape land, I'm so Jersey. I'm so Jersey. I'm like Evita, Patty LuPone, Mandy Patinkin. Like you can't. I try really hard, and then I'm like, oh my god, why couldn't I be on the Fashion Police?
Okay, Bayan. Okay, Bayan. Okay, we're going 3 for 4. What 4 books do you recommend our family read and why?
The Teddy Bear Habit by James Collier. It's a middle grade book just about life and bravery. And it's my favorite story. Huge inspiration for Shiny Misfits. It's called The Teddy Bear Habit. Disability Visibility. It's like the end all be all, like little encyclopedia of disability stories. It's an anthology by Alice Wong. I have one of the stories in it, and I would totally read that. If you want to read something that's just like frivolous, read The Lady of the Lake. It's just a silly book about King Arthur, and I don't know why, but I love it. And then the final book that I would say everyone should read is Amy Poehler, Yes Please. It's like the
Mm.
best comedian biography. And I'm
Wonderful.
sorry I didn't say any Arabic books, but I'm illiterate. I speak fluent Arabic, but I don't read it. Go read the
Well, you know
Quran.
what?
Everyone go read the Quran. You can read the Penguin translation. It's good.
Okay, now we're going to go 4 for 4, and then we're going to let you go. But I hate that moment when you do. And that is, what 4 pieces of advice do you give to our family listening and why? And if it's advice that was given to you direct as you give it to us, please pay homage to the author.
4 pieces of advice? Well, the homage, it has to be me because I'm never going to remember the people I'm quoting. 4 pieces of advice. Okay. So my first piece, it's me. I actually have a web series called Advice You Don't Want to Hear. So my first piece of advice is don't let anyone define you but you. So don't let people define you. You're not like, I'm not a disabled Muslim oppressed woman. They don't get to define me. I get to define me. So you
You
define.
know what? I love that. In our neighborhood, we say it's not what they call you, it's what you answer to.
It's what you answer to. Yeah,
Hmm.
I love that.
What's your second piece of advice?
Second piece of advice is don't let strangers steal your sparkle. So you're online and like, a stranger is like, ew, that chick with chunky knees should never be on TV again. And then you sit there and you're like, I don't know if I should go on TV again. First of all, it was waist up. He never saw your chunky knees. Don't even know what he's talking about. But also, like, what do you care that some guy just said something about you online? You spent 20 years trying to get where you got. Who
Mm.
cares what they think? Like, I am sure the easy way is screw the haters, but that includes when they're in your family.
And I don't know why Chunky Knees gets such a big hit against them, because I know so many women from their late teens to their early 30s who obsess about their knees. They
Their
want both
knees.
knees.
I don't know what the hell it is with the
I don't
knees.
know about guys because I didn't hang with guys to learn that, but I don't know what that is. That's great advice. What's your third?
Don't fight with old people. They might die.
Ah,
Like you get them aggravated enough and they might hit the ground and die and you don't want it.
Okay, dare I ask your fourth piece of advice?
My fourth piece of advice.
You got a naughty look. For those of
I
you who are
know.
listening without video, she's got a
Silence
naughty.
is complicity. Be vocal, outspoken. That violence against children, especially the massacring of them, should stop immediately and never be paid for by our tax dollars.
Oh, Maysoon, 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 Maysoon. When may we soon meet again?
I
love
don't
you
know
so
why
much.
my cat threw up in the middle of my dinner party, but I feel like it's indicative of me not having it.
We gotta check. We gotta check the menu. Hey, listen.
So much fun. Thank
Yeah.
you so much. And if I can ever be of service to the family in any way, I am here to chuckle and yuckle and educate.
Thank you from my heart to your home. Thank you.
Thank you.